It sort of helped me to understand that for the most part, atheism is an outgrowth of faith in the modern God called the state.
The fuck are you talking about? Here I am, working hard on my next Flat Earth video, when YouTube drops this video on my lap. Stefan Strawman Molyneux is going to tell us why atheists are horrible people.
So one thing I can't help but notice is that if you are an atheist, overwhelmingly you are for big government.
That is a bold statement, Stefan. But thankfully, you provided a source. So let's take a look at it. Social and political views of the unaffiliated, meaning atheists and agnostics. Views on the role of government. Unaffiliated, 42%. 42%, Stefan. I don't think you know what the meaning of overwhelming is. It's not just that 42% is not an overwhelming amount. It is also the minority opinion among the unaffiliated. In contrast, 50% of the unaffiliated prefer a smaller government. Here we are, less than a minute into your video, and I have already proven your thesis wrong using the very sources that you provided. I could just stop here, since the rest of your video is dependent on the claim that an overwhelming amount of atheists want a bigger government. But I want to see what other bullshit you have to offer.
You are a leftist. You are on the liberal side.
Oh, I see. You didn't actually mean for big government, you just meant liberal. Let's look that one up. 51%. Well, that's definitely the majority, but I wouldn't call it overwhelming.
Almost 70% of atheists in the US identify as Democrats or lean in that direction. Majority call themselves political liberals, and 1 in 10 atheists say that they are conservatives.
Oh, I see what you're doing. You're being a dishonest douchebag. You're cherry-picking data that helps with your narrative. Forget honesty. Stefan Molyneux doesn't need that shit. Let me get this straight. Atheists are overwhelmingly for big government because 71% are Democrats and 51% are liberals. Even though when asked about the role of government, 52% of atheists say they are for small government. Bah! Who needs nuance in an argument? Just paint everything with a broad brush so you can hide your dishonest douchebaggery. Let's talk about why an atheist might want to be a Democrat. Because this is a more complex issue than what Stefan wants to talk about. Let's talk about the US political parties. There are only 2. And yeah, I know there's more, but really they're inconsequential. As even the source that Stefan provided only talks about the Republican and Democratic parties. What this means is if you hold viewpoints from both parties, there is no party for you to align yourself with. If you're pro same-sex marriage, anti-abortion, pro separation of church and state, and pro guns, there is no party for you. Instead, you can choose your party based on which has the most in common with you, or which party you hate the least. This brings me to why an atheist might not want to be a Republican. In the US, the Republican Party has married itself to religion, more specifically the Christian faith. While occasionally they acknowledge that Jews are people too, for the most part the Republican Party simply dismisses other religious beliefs, and many times they are outright antagonistic to other religious beliefs.
No, this is an important question. This is the most important question that I ask any candidate who's running for political office, and that is this. How important is it for the President of the United States to fear God? And what does that mean to you?
Any president who doesn't begin every day on his knees isn't fit to be commander-in-chief of this country.
Amen.
You can't use the word chaplain with atheists because they don't believe anything. They don't believe in a faith. They don't believe it. So sense. I can't imagine an atheist accompanying a notification team as they go into some family's home to let them have the worst news of their life. And this guy say, you know, that's it. Your son's worms. I mean, worm food. And so this is, I disagree vehemently with
this. The last thing in the world we would want to see is a young soldier who may be dying, and they're at a field hospital, and the chaplain is standing over that person saying to them, if you die here, there's no hope for you in the future. That's the last thing in the world I want to hear.
An historic and controversial move coming out of Madison, Wisconsin, an historic and controversial city. That city is now the first in the country to pass legislation listing atheism as an officially protected class.
Morning, Anna.
So where does this hostility come from in the first place toward Christians?
Well, this ordinance was driven by the Freedom from Religion Foundation. It's a group of angry atheists. They have a very large and powerful group of supporters, and they hector governments to pass anti-Christian, anti-religious ordinances. They team up with government.
It's not just the Republican Party's attitude towards atheists that may deter them from joining the party, but it's also the way in which the Republican Party arrives at their policies. Abortion, same-sex marriage, creationism in school, climate change, evolution, these are issues that the Republican Party holds strong stances on, and all of these stances are not arrived through rational inquiry, critical thinking, or skepticism. These opinions are arrived at because God says so. Why would an atheist join a party that actively hates them, and a party that forms policies based on something that atheists don't even think exists? Republican atheists like Dave Silberman, the president of American Atheists, has acknowledged these issues and has attempted to convince the Republican Party to change its ways.
Ask him. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And now I need a judge, please.
How can you be conservative and be an atheist?
What a fantastic question.
It's a wonderful question. Now give me a fantastic answer.
Because conservatism and Christianity are not synonyms. Okay?
I'm talking about Christianity. I'm saying how can you be a conservative and be an atheist? I'm not talking about Christianity. I'm talking
about conservative and Christianity are not synonyms.
Not Christianity. God. I'm talking about God. If you're an atheist, you don't believe in God.
Right.
Right, okay.
And so I believe in small government. You've got to let me finish my sentence. If you're going to ask me a question, you must let me speak.
All right, let's speak.
I believe in small government. I believe in a strong military. I believe in gun rights. I believe in everything that you want to do should be your right. I believe the government's job is to stand back and charge you as few taxes as possible and give you as much protection as you need to live your life as you see fit. That is conservatism. That's this guy's conservatism, Barry Goldwater. The whole concept that you need to be anti-abortion, anti-gay rights, anti-marriage equality, anti-death with dignity, that's not conservatism. That is theocracy masquerading as conservatism.
Well, not every conservative believes in all of that.
Of course.
But let me say this, we'll take your vote, and God bless you.
Some of the most popular atheist figures have created controversy because they don't wholeheartedly agree with leftist ideologies, while on the other hand, some others have embraced leftist ideologies too much. What all of this adds up to is that choosing a party is not as simple as you make it out to be. Like I said earlier, there is nuance in politics. You don't pick a party and automatically 100% agree with everything that party has to say. You want to talk about politics in this stupid, reductive, and childish manner in order to create a straw man of atheists that you can beat up on.
Conservatism has its pluses and its minuses. One of the pluses is that it's for smaller government. Almost 3/4 of atheists say that coercive government redistribution of money to the poor in the form of welfare does much more good than harm. And that is a challenging statement.
Where the fuck do you get that statement from? Nowhere in the sources that you gave, was there a statistic for whether atheists thought that wealth redistribution was a good thing or a bad thing? Nowhere. Which means that you just pulled this out of your ass. Stefan, you dishonest douchebag. I also love how you talk about conservatives as having good parts and bad parts. But no, not liberals. No. All liberals is bad. They don't have good and bad parts. Only conservatives have good and bad parts. Because you know that there are some things that conservatives believe that are not such a good idea. But you refuse to give the same kind of treatment to liberals.
So, here's the thing. If I live next door to a Christian, that Christian can go to church and can worship and can do whatever they like, and they're not compelling me to do anything. They have their beliefs, I have my beliefs. We shake hands, we exchange cups of sugar in cake emergencies, but they do not force me to do anything.
Are you kidding me, Stefan? You are just ridiculous. What do? Do you just get like diarrhea and then decide that you're going to go on and do your podcast? Because all that you are saying is coming straight out of your ass. Let's look at some examples where some Christians have tried to use the state to mandate what you do. For example, in Virginia, only 4 years ago, did a governor attempt to have transvaginal ultrasounds before an abortion, an actually invasive procedure, and a Christian Republican attempted to get it through. Let's look at Utah nowadays, where they have declared porn a public health hazard, not based on any data, not based on the scientific basis, based purely on their morality, and they want to push their morality onto everyone else. Let's look at all the children who have to go to school and get dragged to creation museums, regardless of their faith. The Christians in these school districts are forcing children, regardless of what their conscience says, to go to a Christian museum. Let's look at the controversy that happened when an Islamic center tried to open near Ground Zero, where, again, Christians, Republicans attempted to shut this down using eminent domain. They literally tried to take away someone else's property because they disagreed with their religious beliefs. No, I'm not saying that all Christians like this. I am giving you very specific examples, Stefan. Because, again, I like nuance, unlike you. I like to actually present the truth, unlike you. And I don't just pull shit out of my ass like you do, you dishonest douchebag.
On the other hand, the lefties, by constantly running to Big Daddy government to enforce their moral conscience on everyone else, regardless of consequences, regardless of ethics, regardless of voluntarism, regardless of the need to choose, that is essential to virtue, the socialists, by running to Big Daddy government, well, they force me to do lots and lots of things. They take my money, they bury me in regulations, they involve my cash in foreign wars, they do lots of god-awful things. And if I try to follow my own conscience and do what I think is best with my resources, well, they support cats in blue showing up with guns to drag me off to jail because of not paying my taxes.
Stefan, you dishonest douchebag. All sides do this. All sides rely on the government to enforce their morality, just as much as some liberals will enforce their morality upon others, so will some Christians enforce their moralities on others, as I have just given you examples of. There is no one side that is entirely against enforcing their own morality using the government. You are pretending as if the Conservative Party 100% agrees with your anarchist ideology, and that is false. It does not. It is just as willing to enforce its morality on people as the left side is. There is no difference. So I don't know where you get this idea. Well, I do know where you get this idea. I shouldn't say that I don't, because I know that you pulled it out of your ass. But I expected you to be able to back this up, Stefan, because you are supposed to be a rational philosopher. But instead you are turning out to just be some dude on the internet who gets in front of a microphone and diarrheas out whatever his first thoughts are. I also want to talk about what a hypocritical little bitch you are, Stefan. Stefan Molyneux, the man who ran to Big Daddy government because his feelings were hurt when someone was criticizing him on the internet. Stefan Molyneux, the man who ran to Big Daddy government to issue a false DMCA strike. You have used the government in order to shut people up. You cannot complain of people running to Big Daddy government when you have done so yourself. And you did this on false pretenses. What I'm going to show you is a clip from the Joe Rogan show in which Stefan admits not just to using YouTube's DMCA process, but also that he used it not because of copyright issues, but because of what he calls the safety of his audience. And I know that he has come out and said, oh, my audience was getting harassed and whatnot, but he has actually yet to present any evidence that this is true. And on the contrary, it is very clear that he did it because people were being very, very critical of him.
There's quite a few places online where people are upset at you, and quite a few things that you have said in these hour-long eloquent pieces that people have vehemently opposed.
Yeah, and I'm annoyed that it's not more. Like,
really?
I want people.
But don't you try to stop them?
Stop them? No.
Don't you pull videos down? Don't you pull videos for copyright infringement and tell people to not make videos?
Oh, no. Oh, this just recently happened. So yeah, this is a guy who worked at FDR, Bob, and pretty personal. So look, everybody uses my stuff, and I don't care about it. And you can do a search on YouTube for my stuff, and everybody who said I'd really like to reuse your stuff, I'm like, hey, go for it, right? But we had a number of listeners who called in and said, listen, this guy's doing some pretty creepy stuff with my personal info here. I'm not comfortable with it, so we used that mechanism to take that down. It's got nothing to do with copyright or anything like that. I just felt that listeners were being acted against in a negative way, significantly negative way, so that's what we did. But it's nothing to do with copyright or anything like that. People use my stuff all the time.
So, Stefan, until you actually come out and apologize for the fact that you ran to Big Daddy government when you had a problem, you have absolutely no right to criticize anyone else for going to the government to help solve their problems, because you are doing the exact same thing and making yourself look like the hypocritical little bitch that you are.
Christians have a thou shalt not steal, which gives them some ammunition against increasing state power. So,
just building up a straw man.
Whereas the liberals, the lefties, the Democrats, well, they want to use the sword of the state to make me follow their moral agenda. And
says the man who used a false DMCA strike, and you have no evidence of this. You just have evidence that a lot of atheists are Democrats.
Let's just say sword a tad more intrusive than word. And that is something that I can't help but notice.
I can't help but notice that you use false DMCA strikes.
Very well. How about, and just try this, if you know an atheist or know somebody who's agnostic or whatever, bring to them the basic argument that the government is the initiation of force, that taxation is coercion, and see how they respond. Do they respond with, wow, never really thought of it that way before? Tell me more. Or do they respond as religious fundamentalists respond when you challenge their faith? I will tell you, it is almost invariably the latter, and I've had many, many conversations.
Look at you, big bad Stefan Molyneux, beating up on that straw man. I bet that feels good. Great way to use fucking anecdotal evidence to prove your point. So skip.
It sort of helped me to understand that for the most part, atheism is an outgrowth of faith in the modern God called the state. That is their new deity, the state. Got a problem? Run to the state. Need something solved? Run to the state. Want something done? Run to the state. Feel bad about something? Pass a law.
Someone's criticizing you on the internet? Run to the state. All right, this is getting incredibly tedious and repetitious. All I am doing now is pointing out how much of a hypocritical little bitch you are, how much you love to use strawmans, how little you actually like to use facts, and instead just like to pull shit out of your ass. This video has just become a repetitious mess, so I'm gonna stop here. If there is any interest by anybody for me to finish the rest of Stefan's video, I might do that. But honestly, it's just more of this. Stefan gets diarrhea, pulls something out of his ass, and says it on his podcast. Stefan creates a straw man of people he doesn't like, and he beats it up. Stefan criticizes others for going to the government to help solve their problems when he himself does the exact same thing. That is pretty much all of Stefan Molyneux in a nutshell.